Strait of Hormuz is now open. That's right. One of the world's most critical maritime corridors has reopened after days of tension following the 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. Now, the reopening triggered a series of strong reactions from US President Donald Trump, who said on Truth Social that the strait is now, quote-unquote, completely open and ready for business and full passage. However, Donald Trump clarified that a US naval blockade targeting Iranian ships will remain in force until negotiations between Washington and Tehran are fully completed. According to Iranian media reports, on the other hand, the United States and Iran have made progress on a 3-page memorandum of understanding aimed at ending the conflict, suggesting talks between the two sides are slowly but definitely moving forward. In another post, meanwhile, Donald Trump said that the United States would recover what he described as nuclear dust generated by the B-2 bomber operations. Everybody remembers Midnight Hammer and, of course, the bombing that took place as part of the ongoing 40-plus day conflict, adding that no financial exchange would take place as part of the arrangement. Now, Donald Trump also claimed that Iran has agreed not to close the Strait of Hormuz again and thanked regional partners including Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar for supporting stabilization efforts. Donald Trump further announced that Iran, with US assistance, is removing sea mines from the strait, which again Iran says some of them we don't even know where they are, calling it a key step towards restoring safe maritime movement. The US president has also added that Washington has directed Israel not to carry out further bombing in Lebanon. We've been discussing how Donald Trump, is he going to be successfully be able to rein in Netanyahu following the ceasefire announcement? And Donald Trump has also thanked Pakistan for its negotiation efforts. Meanwhile, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi confirmed that commercial vessels are allowed to transit through the strait during the ceasefire period, but clarified that the opening applies only to commercial shipping and not military movement. Even as the situation appeared to ease, Tehran issued a fresh warning saying that if the United States' naval blockade continues, Iran could treat it as a violation of the ceasefire and may again close the Strait of Hormuz. So what's going to happen and what should the world believe on? The strait carries nearly 20% of global oil shipments, even as the oil prices have plunged, making developments there critical for global energy markets, already shaken by the recent regional tensions. Donald Trump later claimed the Hormuz situation is effectively over and revealed that NATO had reached out offering assistance during the crisis. He's been disappointed with the NATO nations and it's no news anymore. In response, he said he told the alliance to stay away unless it really wanted to load up its ships with oil and described NATO as a paper tiger during the episode. The developments come just a day after Washington helped broker the temporary ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, which was important for the Iranian delegation, easing fears of a wider regional escalation across the Gulf sector. Major General P.K. Sehgal, defense and strategy expert, with us on the broadcast, and Adit Kothari, foreign affairs and geopolitical expert, with us on the broadcast. General, what do we make of this? Who do we really believe? There's so much, tightrope walking and walking back on those statements. Donald Trump putting out 4 truth socials, all contradicting each other. And then finally, you've got a Lebanon and Israel ceasefire, which was very important for the Iranian delegation. But Iran still maintains if the blockade continues, well, we're going to again close the Strait of Hormuz. So even as markets, heave a sigh of relief, what's really the game plan here, sir?
Game plan is very clear. There's been a huge amount of international pressure on both sides. Under the circumstances, both sides are very, very keen to ensure that they listen to this international pressure. As far as the world at large is concerned, there's been happy news in the sense that oil prices have fallen by about 10%. Markets in Europe and America have risen. As far as India is concerned, the markets are closed at present, but I'm very certain tomorrow in the Indian markets also there'll be a huge surge. Rupee would stabilize a wee bit. And as far as the rest of the world is concerned, there are almost 2,000 ships, 20,000 sailors, and 23 billion barrels of oil, which is already loaded on the ships, which could come out. But Iran has very categorically stated 3 conditions. Firstly, only commercial shipping is allowed to go through, not military vessels. Secondly, they will have to follow a pre-approved route-wise. And thirdly, they will have to coordinate with the Iranian government, that is with the IRGC. On the other hand, as far as Donald Trump is concerned, he says he will continue to blockade Iranian ships as well as Iranian ports. Though Iran says it will be violation of the ceasefire, that notwithstanding, there has been a very good news from that Donald Trump has virtually assured that he's been able to rein in Netanyahu to an extent that he says next 10 days there will be no bombing of Lebanon whatsoever. Also, they've indicated that $20 billion worth of assets of Iran could be defrozen. All this is apparently good news for the rest of the world. And this opening is only up to the time the ceasefire the ceasefire is to end on Tuesday. So today is Friday, so it's just for 3 to 4 days. And as far as America is concerned, America said under no circumstances will they lift off the blockage of Iranian ports, etc., and the Iranian ships till a final deal is signed between Iran and America. That is going to be a long way off, because Americans definitely, and if you've seen some of the posting by Donald Trump, he says the Iranians have agreed to give the nuclear dust. By nuclear dust, he means is 400 kgs worth of enriched uranium to be transported to America. And he says, as far as America is concerned, America will help in excavating that and taking that out. I don't think Iran is going to agree to that. The deal is not so simple. And as far as the shipping companies are concerned, they are very reluctant to accept the Iran's opening of the thing, because they don't want to take risks, and they do not want their sailors to suffer and or their ships to unnecessarily be destroyed because of any mines. All that notwithstanding, America is also saying that it's helping Iran to clear the mines in that area. How long it will take? Can they lift these mines within the next 3-4 days, etc.? is a huge question mark once again, because nobody knows as to how many mines have been laid by Iran and where exactly have these mines been laid.
You're absolutely right. Even the Iranian Navy has put out a statement saying they don't even know, where some of those mines are, and it's going to be a painfully slow process. Add that, but credible points that you've raised, Adit. What do you make of this? Is it coercion? Because yesterday the Secretary of War said this is 10% of the world's best navy versus 0% of the other navy. But we still know that the Basij Force, the IRGC, the Iranian military, and the Coast Guard of Iran, and of course the different types of sea mines that are have been placed very strategically across the Strait of Hormuz, such a narrow maritime corridor. What's your assessment? Will the Israel-Lebanon ceasefire hold on? Will it stay across the 10 coming days? Would you be surprised if the bombings do continue? And the nuclear dust the general was talking about, is it even going to be possible? I think acceptance of nuclear enrichment was point number 2 or 3 on the list of 10 points that Iranian delegation at first put across.
To Kabir, I think Trump's optimism, as we've seen so far throughout the course of this war, is just a negotiating tactic. I don't think we should believe it, like the markets surprisingly do, as some sort of ironclad treaties. Unless there is a joint statement, I don't think we should be believing anything that Donald Trump says, because Donald Trump at this point is like the boy who cried wolf. So every time he cries wolf, the villagers would basically react and come to sort of help him. The problem is that the villagers here, which is basically the markets, are reacting to every time Donald Trump is crying wolf, because his way of crying wolf is changing every single time, which is why, he's been able to navigate through these challenges and, chest thump his way through these dire situations. But look at what's happening from a reality perspective. Donald Trump is saying all of these things about the nuclear dust, as Major General Sehgal pointed out, that that would be handed across to the Americans with the aid of the Americans. There will be absolutely no nuclear or further uranium enrichment, whereas the Iranian position is basically that we want to be part of the NPT because we need that nuclear energy for our survival. That has been the consistent position all throughout the course. So until that joint statement comes out, until we hear from the Iranian side, I don't think we should take Donald Trump's word for anything, because as we've seen through the course of this conflict, his words mean absolutely nothing, because they keep changing every 2 to 3 days. But coming back to the main situation, which is the Strait of Hormuz at this point, we know for a fact that the Iranians are saying that every commercial vessel that passes through the Strait of Hormuz will need to pay that $1 per barrel or $2 million per vessel as toll tax, and that needs to be paid in crypto. So they're not even accepting US dollars
Yeah.
anymore. So the fact is that the Iranians are very close eye on every vessel that is coming in and out of the Strait of Hormuz, because they need to ensure that that trust deficit between them and the Americans, continues to be there, because they especially do not trust them, and they do not trust their military. They do not want any sort of military intervention in the Strait of Hormuz, which is why they're going to continue keeping a very close eye there. We don't know how long this peace will last for, because ultimately we need to remember the Israelis and the GCC, who are the other stakeholders, are not happy with a militarily degraded Iran, but a strategically emboldened Iran. Iran at this point may have been militarily degraded, but they possess the strategy, the leverage, and the assertiveness now to be more emboldened in the near future. In the next 3 to 5 years, they can still continue to hurt Israel in an asymmetrical manner. They can continue to dominate the Sunni regions of the GCC countries with the Shia politics. So all of that comes into contention as well. I personally don't see this lasting for very long.
Okay.
Unless there is a peace treaty signed by both the parties involved.
All right, all right. I do understand that people are cautiously returning back to their homes. Remember, about 1.2 million people, at least more than that number, had been displaced. In the southern half of Lebanon, in the suburbs of Beirut as well. The Hezbollah says that they're cautiously watching on to this ceasefire. And just to help the viewers also understand, CENTCOM has very recently put a new statement, a post on X. It says over 10,000 U.S. sailors, Marines, and airmen are enforcing the blockade, which Iran says could be a violation of the ceasefire. So, General, even as the toll that Adit was talking to us about and telling us, there are coordinated routes that have to be followed by these commercial ships, no military movement. So, the ball is clearly in Iran's court, isn't it? Or are we reading this wrong? This is exactly what Iran wanted. They wanted sovereignty. They wanted control of the Strait of Hormuz. And I think it's playing out exactly the way the Iranians wanted.
To an extent, yes, because the major leverage that has been given to Iran, more than even the nuclear issue at this point of time, is the Strait of Hormuz. They virtually weaponizing it. They want at least to achieve at least $80 billion in terms of annual toll taxes, etc., because they will go for reconstruction of Iran in a very major way. I'm sure in the ultimate analysis they will give that up as a part of concession. But in the meantime, this is a very strong leverage that they have, and they're not going to easily let go. That is the reason why they've said only commercial ships and not military ships, and they've said only as per the pre-approved routes in coordination with the IRGC. Under these circumstances, Iran's control continues to remain. And as far as America is concerned, firstly, one should not, Donald Trump does not enjoy the credibility that he claims to have. Virtually, even the people in America don't trust him. If you've seen the latest Economist says the biggest failure in this war, or the 40 days or 45 days or 46 days, is Donald Trump. And they said the biggest loser is Donald Trump. He stands isolated within his own country. He stands isolated in NATO. There's no European allies which are supporting him. There's no ally Australia or even South Korea or Japan.
He's now thanking Saudi Arabia. He's now thanking Qatar. He's now thanking the UAE, General. But, General, help us understand what happens to this U.S. blockade. 10,000 U.S. soldiers in the area. They're carrying out this blockade. Iran says, well, this could be construed as violation of the ceasefire. And earlier, Donald Trump had said that Iran has agreed to never close the Strait of Hormuz. The president's spokesperson, Pezeshkian's spokesperson, has come out and said that those are baseless statements coming from the enemy. So how do you think this is going to play out? Could this blow into a full-blown military conflict right there in the waters?
I don't think so. There's a huge amount of pressure from China and Russia on Iran that under no circumstances should Iran undertake any military action whatsoever, either against American assets in the Middle East or against Gulf countries, because it will not be in not in Iran's interest, nor is it in Chinese interest, who are the major users of oil and gas from Iran. And under these circumstances, even if you've seen, Donald Trump has extracted a promise from, or I'll say a promise from China, that China will not be supporting Iran in any way whatsoever, nor would Russia be supporting. Though Chinese have been supporting and the Russians have been supporting through their satellite images, etc., where they've been giving absolute precise coordinates, etc., where targeting has been done by the Iranians very effectively. But Chinese have denied this, but they've also ensured with the blockades that they can show that no ships whatsoever can either come through this area or even through the Strait of Hormuz. Even there, the Americans are keeping a close watch on any ship that is coming towards Iran. All this notwithstanding, there is also a huge amount of coercion. They're saying that 10,000 more troops have been already added in that area. They have already 50,000 troops that have been positioned in the last 30 to 40 days. 10,000 more have been added. But Trump knows that putting troops on ground, or I'll say putting feet on ground would tantamount to thousands of body bags flying back. 93% of its commanders and people in America are opposed to the idea of putting troops on ground.
You're
Similarly,
absolutely right.
Trump has got a huge amount of difficulties. Today,
back at home as well, domestically there's pressure as well. Take a look at this, Adit. Before we wrap up this segment, Donald Trump and Iran, look at the contradiction here. Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi says that the Strait of Hormuz would be reopened following the ceasefire in Lebanon. Donald Trump takes on Truth Social to put forth one of his other truths. He says that the two events are unrelated. They're not tied at all. This deal is not tied in any way, but we will make Lebanon great again, just like he's been vouching for making America great again. Look at the domestic pressure for the US president back at home. Impeachment chorus that's growing against the Secretary of War, and the lethality of Pete Hegseth. At least 21 generals that have been dismissed under his secretaryship. So what does one make of these statements, and is he going to be able to rein in Netanyahu, who's been using it till he loses it for a very long time?
I mean, you said contradictions. You can't claim that the Strait of Hormuz is open while, the Iranians are setting up poll tax booths on the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, that for me is the biggest contradiction. The Americans set off to engineer a regime change in Iran. It turns out the actual regime change formally took place in the United States of America. We've seen so many generals, being walked out. So it's Donald Trump is between a rock and a hard place at this point. The Americans clearly do not have the appetite for war. He was clearly sold bad intel. He was probably said that he was probably told that you go in, you take off the 49 leaders of the Supreme Council, and that's a hurrah, it's a big win, and then you can walk back into the White House, go back into your September mid polls, and engineer a victory for yourself. Obviously, that's not happening now.
Become the Ayatollah of the Iranian nation. That's what that was also sold to him. I think that was the selling point. That's what ticked Donald Trump off.
Yeah, so now Donald Trump is basically, trying his level best to basically walk out of this situation with a straight face, try to spin a loss, at least not militarily, but strategically. It's a strategic loss for the United States into a victory, which needs to sell to his domestic audience. Now, the question is whether the American audience is ever going to buy this strategic loss as a victory of America or not. I think that is the big question that the Americans need to be asking themselves.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. A straight face, but with a broken tooth and a blackened eye, is that even possible at this point in time? That's the bigger question. Maybe he had it. He had to come in again and, with this new blockade. I think, it's a selfish move. And why I say that is because the misadventures of two nations in the entire world is having to pay for it. Now, the most important thing for Donald Trump is for those ships to reach and dock on US ports so that he can start sending oil to the rest of the world. I mean, what is all of that oil going to do? It's great. The oil prices are rising in the United States, but what do you make of it? He wants to lubricate the system. That's what he said about a fortnight ago, and he's not being able to do that, and that's really irking the US president. I think we're going to leave it there. Let's see what tomorrow has in store for us. With each passing day, each 24 hours, there's a new thing at play when it comes to the West Asian war. Major General, many thanks for taking out the time. Adit, always a pleasure to have you with us on News 9.